To the Activity Call Live. Now, let's hear it for our special guest host, Marcus Richardson.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Alliance Nation. It's always an honor and a privilege to be before you on this Friday morning, the last Friday of February. I feel like the year is just flying by. You got to get after it. Time is limited, and there is an expiration date. We're off to a good start this year. Everybody's up, business is up, and I'm just honored to be on this call. Thank you that I get to fill in for Andy on the call this morning. And just to all the leaders, I just want to give you a special shout out and say thank you. Thank you for inspiring. Thank you for what you guys do and have you come before us to blaze the path. And a special shout out to have been such a blessing to Carla and I. And I just want to say thank you before we get started and get going into it. I want to say thank you to my beautiful bride, running with me for 21 years and keeping things going and keeping things running so we can perform at the way we perform. So I'm going to give you some stuff today. I was tasked with the task is what it says here. Share with you how to go from transaction, right, to building genuine relationships leading to trust, loyalty, and long-term success. So again, when you think of long-term success, what I want to start with, let me just say this. If you're watching and you're tuning in for the first time and you've never watched an Alliance call, you've never watched me or any of our leaders teach, and if you don't have a pen and paper, you get your tablet out, you get your notes out, and you start taking notes. Here's why. Because a learner is a leader. I'll say that one more time. A person who is a continual learner is a leader. When you stop learning, you stop leading. In order to lead effectively, you have to continue to grow your capacity. So we're going to share some things with you today, hopefully that will allow you to learn how to lead yourself, how to lead others. And this is going to be more of a sales topic, but it's not just sales. You can use this in any area of your life, because if you understand the importance of relationships, right, you can literally change your world. Because my dad has always told me this, and it's really stuck with me. He says, son, you're one relationship away from destiny, from changing your life. And I've taken that to heart. The relationship that I've developed and established with Andy and Jane over the last 13 years has literally changed and transformed my life and the lives of so many others. And so I'm just honored to be able to be on this call to talk to you all about relationships. Now, listen to me clearly. I don't want to talk as if I'm perfect and as if I have this all together, because I don't. But what I am going to share with you is some things that I have learned and some skills that I have learned over the last, I've been doing sales for 24, 25 years, right? So I'm going to hopefully share some of those things with you when you're talking to a client that you can now put in your knapsack and you'll be able to use to develop a relationship with the client. Okay. So again, you got your pen and paper out. So I like to teach and kind of help you understand things first before we get into the nuts and bolts of it. So let's define what a relationship is, right? So a relationship is this. Here's what it says. A relationship is a connection between two or more people built on interactions, trust, and shared experiences. So again, I'm going to read that again. A relationship is a connection between two or more people built on interactions, trust, and shared experiences. It can take many forms: personal, professional, romantic, or social, right? So that's one of the definitions of relationships. So we're going to talk in that regards. But here's what I know, like all human beings are wired for connection. All human beings. You're wired for connection. Your spouse is wired for connection. Your significant other is wired for connection. Your children are wired for connection. And it's the relationship that allows us to connect. And just think about it. When you are in a relationship, if you're in a relationship and you have a bad experience, you don't like going back to that place because you don't like the connection that it causes. It's kind of like your phone, right? I have an iPhone. And so sometimes I'm in an area where it's roaming or I don't get good service. And my iPhone is always looking for a place to connect. Human beings are no different. Our clients are no different. Our agents are no different. Our families are no different. We're always looking for a place to connect. And when you find a place to connect, now you got to have similar values and core connections. So let's take it a little bit further. So with relationships, I'm going to give you some 4 key points on relationship, and then we'll get into the formula about how to build connections with clients. Okay. So the 4 core things that I think are really important when it comes to relationship that are important, like vitally important. The first one is communication. Now, how openly and honestly people interact with each other, right? When we talk about communication. And let me say this, when it comes to communication, sometimes you can be saying the right message, but it's not what you say, but how you say it, right? I've always been taught this. It's good to communicate truth, but truth without love leads to rebellion. So if I'm teaching and I'm teaching from a platform of truth, what I'm saying might be true, but if I don't care about you, if I don't love you and I don't communicate it in a loving way, a lot of times you shut down. So when it comes to relationships, the first one is communication. What are you saying? What are the words that you're saying? And then here's the other thing when it comes to communication. What are you not saying? Like, what is your body language saying? What are your facial expressions saying? Right? Everything is a form of communication. So you have to make sure that you stay on point when it comes to communicating. Next one is trust. And we're going to talk about this in our formula as well. So I won't get too deep into it. But here's what trust is. Trust is the confidence that someone will act with integrity and care. So when you're developing a relationship with someone, the real question you're asking, the real question our clients are asking is, can I trust Marcus? Can I trust this person that's sitting in front of me to make the best recommendation for my situation? Can I trust them? Number 4 is consistency. So in relationships, people look for consistency. One of the things my wife has been working with me for 21 years is, Marcus, can you stay consistent? The consistency in regards to what you say you're going to do. Like if I tell her I'm going to do something, now she watches and says, okay, are you going to do that consistently? And then what happens is, if I'm not consistent, same thing happens with the client. If you're not consistent, it drives a wedge and it breaks down trust. And then you have to go and build trust up again and then show yourself consistent. So consistency in relationships is huge. Okay. Now, it has to be a mutual benefit. So point number 4, when it comes to relationships, is a mutual benefit. So really a mutual benefit. Have you ever been in a relationship where it's like a take relationship? All they do is take from you. You don't want to answer their phone calls because all they're going to do is ask you for something or want to borrow something. And then they don't even give it back, or you give it to them and they act like they don't know that you gave it to them. Now you can't find them. You got to go hunting for them. Like when they wanted the money, they took your call. They were nice to you when they wanted something from you. But now that they have what they want from you, they're nowhere to be found, right? So when it comes to relationships, make sure the relationship is a mutual benefit where you give to them and you're not just a taker, and you add value to them. And this is the importance of relationships. So that's our first category if you're taking notes about relationships, okay? Now, let's take it deeper, because today the goal is to help you on the sales side, from taking a client from the initial phone call, right? And then making that client of client, right? Let me just say this. When you initially call them, they're a prospect. Now, you got to take them from prospect to client. From client to like family almost. And so that's what I'm hoping that this call will do for you today, is to show you how to build a business. So when you are if you're brand new listening to this, I'm not sure when you're listening to this in your career, or if you've been with us for a while, and your placement is bad, your persistency is bad, you're getting chargebacks left and right, you got that pit in your stomach when the client calls you, like, oh gosh, here they go, they're going to cancel. I have been there, where you don't even want to answer the phone because you think they're going to call you and say, hey, you know what, that policy you sold me for $200 a month last week, by the way, that you've already been paid on as the agent, I need to stop that. It's not going to work. And so now you're like, oh man, you kind of avoid wanting to answer the phone call. I have been there, right? And so what I'm trying to share with you is some things that will help you if you take what we're saying and you apply it. Hopefully it will help you to where you don't have to take as long as I did to figure it out. All right, so let's get into it. So what I'm going to give you today, the first part is the relationship formula. So we define what relationships are, right? Now I want to give you a relationship formula that will help you build genuine connections, okay? So I'm going to give you 5 points today on these relationship formulas, but on the 5 points, I'm going to give you subsets. So again, if you're taking notes, if we were in a classroom setting or you got your notepad in front of you, point number 1 would be this. It's the relationship formula, okay? And then subset A, or subpoint number 1 of this relationship formula into building genuine relationships. Number 1 is authenticity. You have to keep it real and be recognized game. Like, people recognize when you're trying to run game on them and you're smooth talking, you're fast talking, and people don't appreciate it. So make sure you're your genuine, authentic self. Now, here's the other thing. Most people don't know who their authentic self is. So I would encourage you to spend time with yourself and ask those questions like, who am I? How do I want to show up when I'm talking to a client on the phone? How do I want to show up when I go to the house? How do I want to show up in a sales presentation, right? Who do you want to be? How do you want to be remembered when they think of Marcus, or when they think of Terry, or when they think of Eric? How do you want to be remembered? And make sure you're authentic. Now, another way of being authentic and being transparent is sharing stories that are genuine, that people can relate to. So whenever I'm teaching, one of the goals is to try to teach in a way that's relatable, where people don't think that we have it all together, or that we've never been, like when you're talking to a client, we want to be able to teach from a place of, hey, I've been there before. I know what it's like. So one of the ways that I try to show authenticity when we first get to the house is I listen to them and ask good questions, but I share the story about how my mom passed away. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute. This guy is not just here trying to sell me something. Like, he's been through this before. He's had some of those same experiences I have. And when you open book like that, now their guard comes down, and they're like, oh, okay, he's real. He's genuine. And so that's what people look for, is authenticity. Subset point number 2. Okay. And this is the relationship formula. You ready? So the relationship formula, subset point number 2, is empathy. Now, this one I need a lot of help with. But empathy is this: put yourself in their shoes. And my wife and my daughter are working with me on this one. But what empathy is, like, I was having a very interesting conversation last night with my daughter, and she kept saying, Dad, you're not hearing me. You don't understand. And so my daughter's 15. So what I have to do is I have to allow myself to be in their shoes. Let's take it to the client perspective. So when you're talking to a client, put yourself in their shoes. What's it going to look like for the beneficiary when they pass away? Have you been in a situation like this before? Like, why is this important? Questions you can ask them, like, why is this important to you about getting life insurance? Or when you're talking about the estate planning, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are some concerns that you have? What made you come to the seminar? Like, empathy is putting yourself in their shoes. And then, it says to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, right? Yeah. You got to take yourself out of the equation. But the problem the reason that's so hard for me, I don't know, maybe you guys have it all together, is because by nature, we're selfish. By nature, I have a me nature. And so when we start talking empathy, when it comes to the clients, like, we're there, we want to make a sale. Don't get me wrong, right? We need to make a sale. We got bills to pay, things like I get that. But if you're really going to express empathy, you have to get outside of yourself and put yourself in their shoes, and then listen to what they're saying. And as you do that, that's how you express empathy when you're dealing with sales, when you're helping somebody, or even in your life personally, is being empathetic. And again, this is an area of prayer for me. And so being empathetic is something that I encourage you to do, but really put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, what's going to happen if this doesn't get taken care of? And then, can I get them to crystallize that when they're talking to me? Hopefully this is making sense. Subset point number 3 on the relationship formula is this: value first. And if you saw our call in December, I was big on this, but you want to approach every conversation with the mindset of helping and not selling. So when I go into a sales situation, I'm trying to figure out what they need and how I can add value to them. Because if you're a person of value, they'll trust you. When you are there to add value, like, hopefully you guys are getting value from this call, right? That's the ideal. When you're with a client, you want to add value to them. And if you're not reading, if you're not growing, if you're not coming to our events, if you're not putting yourself in an environment where you can grow, how can you be of value to anybody else if you're not putting yourself in those environments to grow? So value is critical. I'm not necessarily going in here to sell you something. I'm going in here to add value to you. And guess what? Because I'm a person of value, because now I've helped you identify your problem and I've showed you that there's a solution, guess what? The next only other thing is value. And remember this in sales: people buy perceived value. People buy perceived value. That's why you'll get a shirt, right? You'll pay more money for a shirt because the name that's on the shirt. Yep. A Robert Graham shirt can be the same red shirt, but Robert Graham being on it, it gives it value. Does that make sense? So when you are a person of value, they're gonna see that you add value to them and to their situation. And guess what? The sale is a byproduct. You helping them is a byproduct because now you have added value to their situation and they know, oh, wait, Marcus is a person that can solve my problem, right? And I've heard it said like this, and I think it's really important that you catch this. If you want to make a lot of money, find the problem and then you be the solution. If you want to find your purpose in life, find out the problem that God created you to solve. If you look in history, every person that's made a profound impact, right? We're celebrating Black History Month, Martin Luther King, right? He was a person of value. There was a problem, civil rights and equal opportunity, right? And treating people the way God intended for us to treat. So he found a problem and he became a solution to a problem, but he was valuable, right? If you, when you are talking to people and you're making sales, become a person of value, they will begin to trust you. So when you're a person of value, here's what that looks like. Your clients will call you instead of calling the carriers. So if you're new starting and you're getting cancellations, right, and the clients are not calling you to cancel, now don't get me wrong, we don't want them to cancel, okay? But if they're not calling you and they're calling the company to cancel, you didn't add value. You didn't create a solution to their problem. They don't trust you. And so those are just some indicators like, oh, are people calling? And when they cancel, they calling the company or they calling me, right? If they call you, you did a good job on the front end. Now we got to talk about the back end part. So that's number one, the relationship formula. You ready? So let me just reiterate, if you're taking notes, you should have authenticity, empathy, and you should have value first. Okay. All right. Subset point number 2. So we got 5 points. We're on number 2. You ready? So point number 2 is trust as a foundation. So trust is the cornerstone of long-term relationships. Trust. Easier said than done, but trust. So let's dig into it, okay? So the first thing when it comes to trust isn't built overnight. So some ways that you can establish trust when you talk to clients is when you talk to a client or an agent for that matter. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. Let me give you an example. If you say, hey, your appointment's at 11 now, let me just say this. I do recommend if you're running in the field that you tell them to give you a window. So in case you're running late, they're not freaking out. But if you say your appointment's at 11, you show up at 11 or close to 11. What does it do? It helps develop trust. Okay. Now, another thing that helps develop trust, if you tell them, hey, the policy gets issued, and once it gets issued, I'll call you. Or let's say you have assistants or staff, I'll call you or we'll shoot you a text, let you know everything was issued and approved. Guess what happens? That develops trust because you are a man or a woman of your word. If you say that you're going to do something and then you don't do it, they don't trust you. And it might be something small. It could be something small as saying you're going to text them when their policy is issued, but their policy gets issued and you forget to text them. They may not come out loud and say it, but subconsciously in their mind, they're like, I don't trust Marcus. I don't trust him because he didn't do what he said he was going to do, right? I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where we all have been in a situation where, hey, this person didn't do what they say they're going to do. And so all trust was broken. Or have you been in a situation where you've been doing a great job, you've been establishing trust, you've been going through, they trust you? Because let me say it like this. Trust is the hardest thing to gain, but it's the easiest thing to lose. And you can lose it in a moment. One act, right? You do one thing wrong, and now all the trust you've built over this long period of time is gone because you did one thing wrong. You said one thing, you didn't act in character, and now they no longer trust you. It happens in relationships at home. It happens with the clients. So when you're developing trust, remember it's long term. So when you're talking to clients, build your business in such a way that they can trust you. And we're in this for the long haul. Like I didn't get into insurance just to get in and then I'm going to go somewhere else and make more money. Like I got into insurance because I want to help people. I want to serve people. And I want people to know that they can trust me. So anytime they need something, they think of Marcus, their life insurance guy. And when you do a good job of trust, you get more referrals. You get people wanting to send you business. They're like, oh, I got an insurance guy. Like I just helped out a gentleman yesterday, Larry. I didn't know Larry. I knew Pearl. Pearl recommended me to her brother Larry because she trusts me. So anybody in her family that needs my help, this is when you know you're doing a good job. When they call you and they say, hey, you got to talk to my brother, or you got to talk to my cousin, or you got to talk to my auntie. That means you're doing a good job of developing trust. Now, another thing that can with trust, and we talked about this on the relationship side, is consistency. Consistency. One of the reasons that people trust you, right, is when you're consistent, when you do what you say you're going to do and you consistently do that. And really what it boils down to is just character. You just having good character. Like, I love the way Andy says it. He says, character is this. It's when you make a commitment in an environment. So we'll be at an event, we'll be excited and say, I'm going to the next one, right? Or I'm going to build this business and I'm going to have this many people selling, or whatever the commitment is, right? Now the environment's gone, but can you stay true to the decision that you made when the environment is no longer there? That's character. That's consistency. So making sure that you're consistent in what it is you say you're going to do, and making sure you do that every single day. But that comes through integrity. Integrity is what? Being one, being true to yourself. Integrity means that I'm going to stay with it no matter what happens. And when no one's looking, are you integral? Are you doing the right thing by the client? Are you making sure you're saying the right thing on the phones? Are you making sure this is the right product to put them in? That's integrity. And that's what creates trust. Subset point number 2, when it comes to trust, be willing to tell the client, hey, this might not be a good fit. Like, here, better way of saying it, be willing to walk away from the sale. Be willing to walk away from the sale. Now, I will say this, the more activity you have, the more likely you are to walk away from the sale. When you know you have 10 appointments in a day and someone's acting crazy, you don't have to deal with that. So put pressure on your activity. And when you put pressure on your activity, it allows you to be able to make better decisions and walk away from it. So you don't have to deal with the nonsense of them talking crazy, just throw me in the backyard. Come on, we don't got time for that, right? So that's what allows you to be able to walk away from a sale and knowing that, hey, I might not be the best person for you, right? I might not be the best person for you. So that's point number 2. You ready? Point number 3. Going beyond business from clients to friends and even family. So this is, I'm going to slow down here, okay? So remember I said start with the end in mind? Here's what I think. Every client that I interact with, I treat them like they're my family. So if they're older than me by 20 years or so, 25 years, I treat them like they're my mom or like they're my dad. If they're 30, 40, 50 years older than me, I treat them like they're my grandparents. And now, if they're the same age as me, I treat them like they're my brother or they're my sister. And then if they're younger than me, because now I'm at that point now where I got younger people buying life insurance, I treat them like they're my kids. Okay? Here's why. Because I'm not going to sell my mom something that's going to hurt her or be detrimental to her. I'm not going to sell a product that's not going to be the best fit for my dad, whether it's life insurance, or it's an annuity, or it's our critical illness policies. Like, I'm not going to do anything to screw over my mom. I'm not going to do anything to screw over my dad. And I remember we had this one time, there was this agent on my team, and he was doing some trifling stuff, just trifling. And so I called him and I asked the question. I said, bro, would you do that to your mom? He was like, no. I said, so why are you doing it to these people? So when it comes to this, slow down and treat everybody like their family. Hopefully you have good relationships with your family. But even if you don't, there are just certain things you don't do, right? You don't lie to your family. You don't try to get over on your family. You're not going to ask your family to pay more than they can afford. Like, I'm not going to ask my family who's making $3,000 a month to pay $300 for life insurance. Why? Because that's 10% of their income. If you're doing that, that's asking for a chargeback. Like, you're literally asking for a chargeback. But I wouldn't do that to my family, right? So knowing that, it allows me to be able to look at this and say, okay, how would I want someone to treat my mom? Right? How would I want someone to treat my dad? And here's another thing I've told people oftentimes when I'm selling. And we're like going back and forth and we're in this situation. And I'll never forget it. I love my client, David, Mr. Powell. he said this because we were in the house and we were going through it, and he was kind of teetering tottering on some things, and he had another policy, and it was a term policy that was getting ready to expire. And I said, Mr. Powell, can I talk to you like I would just tell my dad? And he said, yeah. I said, well, here's what I would tell my dad. If you keep this term policy, Dad, if you keep this term policy, that's fine because it's cheap. But the odds are you're going to outlive it, and then you're going to be older. And Dad, when you get older, do you think your health is going to get better or it's going to decline? He said, probably decline. I said, exactly. And when it declines, now you're going to be looking for life insurance. And when you're looking for life insurance at age 80, it's going to be harder to get insured than if you do it now when you're 68. And he was like, that makes sense. That's what I would tell my dad. I would tell my dad, hey, it's good that you had the term policy because that was going to take care of your family when you died. Now you're getting to the point now where this is about to expire in a couple of years. And so, Dad, if you don't do something about your policy when this expires, Mom's not going to have any life insurance. And ultimately, Mr. and Mrs. Powell, Pamela Powell is her name. I said, do you want to make sure Mrs. Powell has still got life insurance when you're older? Or do you want to keep this term? Oh, and by the way, at the end of this is why you always want to have them grab their policy, okay? At the end of this, do you see how it's going to go to $500 a month? I thought you were on a fixed income. Are you prepared to go from $50 to $500 a month? Huh. And then I was like, since we're here at this level, so Dad, do you want to keep this term or do you want to pay an extra $100 now and not have to worry about the $500, in 2 or 3 years? Mr. Powell was like, thank you for breaking it down like that. I appreciate you and respect you. Now, this was probably 11 years ago. So Mr. and Mrs. Powell are my clients. Anytime he needs something, he calls me. So this is when I talk about setting it up, okay, and treating them like their family. So he calls me his son. Anytime he needs something, he calls me, and I have sold him multiple policies. I have also sold his wife multiple policies and his kids. Oh, and by the way, he has a retirement account. I helped him roll that retirement account into an annuity because he knows that I'm going to do right by him because I'm going to treat Mr. Powell like he's my dad. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to hurt him or jeopardize it. But that's going from clients to creating friends. So when you go from clients to creating friends, you have to keep in mind, how would you treat your friends? Let me say this. If you don't have friends, that could be a problem. That could be a problem. Or if you look back and your friends, your relationships are only like a year long, or you only got a relationship for like 6 months and then they stop calling and you stop talking to them. That's what we call, like, if you're looking at a boat, that's the wake of the boat. That's the aftermath of your relationships. And so if you don't have solid relationships, that means you got to look in the mirror and there's something that you need to change. Okay. Now, on this one, I'm still on point number 3. Okay. Treating them like their family. Another subset of this is be present in their lives and go beyond a sales conversation. Another example, being present is like what they need. So I had another client and she passed away. It was husband, wife, Mr. Van. And my wife, we remember this one. My son went to me with an appointment before. We were kind of talking to him. They had kids around Adriel's age. And so when she passed away, I went to the funeral. Now, I don't recommend going to all the funerals, right? I don't recommend that. But that was the kind of connection that we had. Mr. Van needed my help. I walked him through the death certificate, helped him get the claim paid, helped him go through that process. Mr. Van now lives in Iowa, right? In December, I helped Mr. Van roll over another annuity from the money he had from his wife when she passed away this January. Mr. Van has been a client of mine for 9 years because it wasn't just about making the sale for me. I treat Mr. Van like he's my dad or like my grandfather. And so when you look at it from that perspective, really what happens when it talks about going from business, right, on this point number 3, going beyond business, do you care? That's really what it boils down to. Do you really care about these people, or do you just want to make a sale? Because if you just want to make a sale, you're not helping them fill out the death claim. You're not going to the funeral. You're just trying to make a sale. Slow down and ask yourself, do you care about the people? How can you serve the people? And again, when you get to this mindset, you're now adding value, right? Another way to do this is in the sales conversation. So that was point number 2. Another point number 3 is celebrate their milestones. And I love the ARC and the CRM because in the ARC now, guess what? it tells us when their birthday is. So you don't have to remember it. And people text me like, oh, Marcus, you're so thoughtful. Thank you for remembering my birthday. Shoot them a text. If you got staff, have your staff start sending them text messages, telling them happy birthday. The Rich Group is thinking about you. Marcus is thinking about you. But that lets people know that they matter. It lets people know that you hear them, that you see them, and that you're thinking about them. And then guess what? When you call them for their annual review and you're going back, they remember, oh, Marcus is the one that reached out to me and made me feel seen. Most people have a sign on their head that says, make me feel seen, make me feel valued, make me feel like I matter. And remember this, in point number 3, going beyond business. People will not always remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel. So when you're selling, right? When you're leading a team, when you're leading people, they're asking, how is Marcus making me feel? What feeling are you creating? So ultimately, when you're in a home or when you're on the phone selling, I want to create a feeling of, I care about you. I'm in your same boat. I see you. You matter. Let's fix the problem together. And when you create that kind of pull, sales are going to come. Sales will be a byproduct when you get good at this because you care. And then, of course, you got to know how to ask for the sale, right? You got to know how to close. But when they know you care, the sale is a byproduct because you care and you're not treating them just like another transaction. You're treating them like this is a relationship. All right. And then subset point number 4 on this one, we're still number 3. Subset point number 4, stay in touch. And I kind of alluded to it with the annual reviews. But if you've been here a year, if you've been here 6 months, even if you've been here 90 days, you can check in with people and say, hey, how's everything going? I wanted to make sure you got your paperwork and just stay in touch. Because when you're building a business, people will buy life insurance 7 times over the course of their life is what the statistics say. So if they're going to buy life insurance 7 times over the course of their life, they might as well get it from the life insurance guy, right? Or the life insurance gal. So when you're staying in touch with them, guess what? They're going to get it from you. So you want to make sure you stay in touch. And it's not like a one-night stand. It's not like, oh, I made the sale, I'm off to my next one, made the sale, off to my next one. No, I care about you. You matter. And I'm in this with you. I'm in it for the long haul. So if you need anything, you got me. Right. And letting them know I'm your agent now for life. So, and this is what I always tell people. I said, I'm your life insurance agent unless the good Lord takes me or calls me to do something different. But I've been doing it for 14 years. So I don't see myself going anywhere. But as long as the good Lord puts breath in my body, I'm your guy. They laugh, they chuckle, they say, okay, Marcus. And then I have them put my card in their wallet or save my number in their phone, stuff like that. So we are building that relationship and we're going beyond the sale and we're actually treating them like their family. And then when you do that, you'll have people like Miss Betty. Miss Betty and I have been rocking together since 2012. She probably got 6 or 7 policies from me, a couple of annuities, right? But she literally calls me her grandson. She calls me son. And guess what? Miss Betty gives my kids birthday cards. Yep, my son just had his birthday. She gives Adriel a birthday card with money in it and has been doing that since he was like 13, probably since he was like 10. Yeah. And she does it with Maya. She doesn't have to. She's a client of mine. And she's not like rich or have a lot of money. But I've created that relationship because she knows I care about her. It's not just about making the sale. And now she knows that I care. And guess what? My family gets to reap that benefit of having Miss Betty in my life. You will get to reap that benefit from having clients like Miss Betty, like Mr. Van, like Mr. Powell in your life when you build it and going beyond just selling to actually caring about people and treating them like their family. All right. Point number 4. You ready? Now, this one is tough. Point number 4, but it's active listening. All right. It's one of our 8 steps. Listen. But it says this: be quick to hear and slow to speak. Right? You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You want to be quick to hear and slow to speak. And I've been asking people on our team, I said, what's the difference between listening and hearing? Now, this is just me on here, so you can't answer me back, right? But if you were thinking about this, what would you say? Now, most people say, in the original writing in the Hebrew, okay? Listening is just hearing like noise, okay? But hearing, this is when it comes to listening, this is effective listening, okay? Active listening is this. Hearing means to give audience to with the intent to obey. Yep. Hearing with the intent to obey, or hearing with the intent to get someone to move. A lot of salespeople are not effective selling because they're not hearing what the client is saying and what they're not saying. Active listening is a skill. And it's funny, I was talking about this last night at our hotspot. They do teaching classes on public speaking. They do teaching classes on like body language. They do all kinds of teaching classes. Have you ever went to a class on hearing and listening? No. We just assume you know how to do this. Active listening is a challenge. Active listening is this. So my favorite book says, a fool answers a matter before he hears the end of it. So when a person is talking to you, are you thinking of what you want to say next? Or are you listening to what they said and then responding? Because if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, you're not actively listening. Are you hearing what they're saying, but your mind is thinking about what you're going to do tonight when you get off? You're not actively. I have been there. Guilty as charged, right? So I'm not talking to you as if I'm perfect. But really what you do is you got to lock in. Lock into what they're saying, their body language, their facial expressions. Are they open to me? Are they leaning in, right? Am I leaning in? And when you start actively listening, if you want to be interesting, be interested. Okay. All right. So let's go to some of our sub points on active listening. So point A on active listening is most people listen to respond. Most people listen to respond. Great salespeople listen to understand. So when you're a great salesperson, you're going to ask more clarifying questions. Example would be, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You repeat it back to them. Make sure you're following what they're saying. So am I listening to respond, which means I'm not really active listening to you? Or am I listening to understand you? Because you need to understand them before you're understood. Most people want to be understood, but they don't want to understand people, especially when you got like the political stuff and people arguing on social media and all that kind of stuff. They want to respond, but they don't want to understand. They don't want to understand where the right's coming from, and the left doesn't want to understand, and the right doesn't want to understand where the left is coming from. And I'm not here to get into all that. But what I'm really trying to communicate is that your goal when you're talking to clients, when you're talking to agents, is to understand their situation. I can understand your situation, and I don't have to agree with you. That's the other thing that most people do, is they don't understand why they believe the way they believe or why they see things the way they see it. And then they want to disagree and argue with them. I'm not trying to disagree and argue with my client. I'm trying to figure out where they're at and how I can move them to where I want them to go. And where I want them to go is to make the good decision for their family to buy this product to protect them. Or I want them to take their retirement account and put it in this account to protect their retirement so that way they're not in a bad situation when the market declines. Whatever it is, I need to understand them though. And so to understand, you want to make sure you're asking questions. When you ask questions, what happens is it draws the wisdom, it draws what's in a person's heart out of their heart. So that's why it's important to ask questions, because when you do, you're trying to understand where they're coming from. And then you're not making assumptions. And when you make assumptions, what that means, that is the word assume means, right? Yeah. Right. So let's not make assumptions about where we think they're coming from, but let's actively listen. And then let's do it to understand where they're coming from. Point number B on this one, okay, is use and repeat the clarify method. I just gave an example, but let me hit you with it again, okay? So part B says this. So what I'm hearing is that's a good way to actively listen. So when I'm having that conversation I told you guys about earlier with my daughter, right? What I'm hearing you say is, or let's take it in the home. Okay. So you're selling, you're on the phone with the client, selling over the phone in the home, however it is you're selling. And they say, well, I sent in this request, or I went online looking for life insurance because my cousin passed away. She was 43. She didn't have any life insurance, had 2 young kids, and it just left us in a bad spot. And then what you do is say this. So what I'm hearing is, and then you repeat it back to them. That lets them know that you're listening. So what I'm hearing is you're concerned about making sure your family's not in the same situation as your cousin's family when you pass away. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Or another thing you can do is after you clarify, okay, what I'm hearing is, then after you say that, then you want to confirm that you heard it correctly, right? Does that sound right? Does that sound right, Jim? Does that sound right, Mary? And they're like, yep. He's listening. He's got it. Okay. So You want to make sure you hit them with, does that sound right? And they might say, no, actually, I was trying to communicate this, or here's what I really wanted to have happen with my account, or here's what I was really trying to do. So then you know that you're solving the actual problem that they have, and you're not shooting in the dark. It'd almost be like if we were throwing darts, right? And I had the lights off in the room. If you don't actively listen, you're trying to throw darts at a dartboard with the lights off and your eyes closed, for that matter. You're never going to hit the bullseye. When you learn how to listen, you turn the light on, right? And then when you learn how to ask clarifying questions, you start hitting the bullseye. So what I'm hearing you saying is, does that sound right? Bullseye. So what I'm hearing you say is that you really want to take care of your family. And here's why you want to take care of your family. Does that sound right? Bullseye. Right? So the better you can get at that when it comes to actually actively listening, the more success you'll have of getting people to move. And this is also on the business side, hearing what they're saying and then turning the lights on by asking clarifying questions. Now, if you struggle with memory, so some people say, I can't remember names or I don't remember stuff. So this is point C on active listening. Okay. This is point number C on active listening. If you struggle remembering stuff, or your mind wanders, or you're doing your intakes on the estate planning, and this is a lot of stuff going on, right? When people are coming to the office, or you're in a home and you got a lot of stuff to remember and you got 10 appointments, right? Sometimes it can be a lot. It can be a lot to remember. Do not be afraid to take notes. You can put notes in the ARC, your CRM. There's a note section when you're talking to your current clients. Or if you're old school like I am, I got a yellow pad, paper, and I just write stuff down. Yep, that's how I roll. I'm kind of old school like that, right? But don't be afraid to take notes. It shows that you value what they're saying. And then here's where they really like you, is when you can call Katie on your policy review, where you talk to her in November. So a client of mine, Katie, talked to her in November. She's getting ready to leave her job and go to this other job, and she's got a couple of accounts with TIAA. And so I'm writing all this out, and then you save the notes. And then next time you talk to Katie, or the next time I talk to Katie, I went over what we talked about in November, and I talked to her in February. And guess what? I'm adding value, right? I'm showing that I have character. I'm showing that I listen, and I'm showing that what she tells me matters and it's important to me. And guess what? Subconsciously, Katie trusts me. She doesn't know why, but she does, because I'm matters. Or have you ever been in a situation where you're talking to someone and they keep just looking at their phone? They keep doing one of these. You're talking to them. Or you go out to dinner and you see people sitting at the table and everybody's on their phone and no one's actually looking at each other, right? They're not actively listening. Or how do you feel when you're talking to someone and their eyes keep going away, or they're not looking at you, or they're not making good eye contact? That's another thing with active listening. Make eye contact, right? And listen to what they're saying. Because if you're not listening to what they're saying, you're not going to grasp everything. You can miss some things. And then learning how to listen to what they're not saying. When you're getting to think about it a lot, there's something that you missed, that you didn't get a clarifying question. You didn't do, does that sound right? And I teach this, but when you're dealing with husband, wife, you want to do the same thing to both. So if you ask Jim what his reason was, and then you say the question. So what I'm hearing you say, Jim, is you repeat it back. Then you want to do the same thing to Mary. Is that right? So what I'm hearing you say, Mary, is that right? You want to make sure that your family's taken care of, the house is paid off when you die, or that the kids, that Jim doesn't have to, use the money in that account to pay for the funeral. You want him just to have that money free and clear. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Does that sound right? Yes. Now, here's where you miss it sometimes. You're getting to think about it a lot, especially when you're dealing with husband and wife, is you may have done the active listening with Jim, and then you ask a clarifying question, but you didn't do the active listening with Mary. And if you don't ask the clarifying question with Mary, guess what? When Mary gets to the end of the process of the sale, guess she's going to look at Jim and say, well, baby, you know what? We need to think about it. And Jim's like, well, we clearly need it. But guess what? You didn't actively listen to Mary, and you didn't capture Mary's heart. And you don't know what Mary's looking for because you didn't actively listen to both of them. So when you're in your sales process, you want to actively listen and ask clarifying questions. And like I said, don't be afraid to take notes. Don't be afraid to write it down. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions to both of them, because when you are clear on where they're trying to go, you can help them get to where it is they want to go. But if you're not clear, it's like shooting darts with the lights off at a bullseye with your eyes closed, with your blindfold on. I'm trying to over exaggerate on purpose. You're never going to hit the bullseye. You're never going to figure out what the problem is that you're there to solve if you don't actually ask clarifying questions. All right. And then clarifying questions also shows that you care. When you ask questions, it shows that you care. And then when you repeat it back to them, it shows that they matter. Everybody wants to know that they matter. Your spouse, your kids, our clients, your life, the people that are working with you, your employees, your staff, like everybody wants to know that you care. Can you show that you care? Again, I have not been perfect in this area, working on it. I'm a work in progress. Y'all pray for me. But you want to show that you can care, that you care. Okay. All right. And here we are on number 5, and then we'll give them closing thoughts. Okay. So this is point number 5 to our formula of moving clients to family. Consistency and follow-up. You heard me say it before on the relationship piece, and we were teaching about what relationships are, but consistency is everything. And the way the leader said, the way we say it, consistency has a compound effect. When I'm consistently checking in with my clients, they know that I care. So point number 5 is follow up and consistency, like checking in consistently. So what that looks like is this right here. So a subset of connections and consistency is follow up and checking in. And when you do that, it adds value. So that's point number A. Right? You want to check in. And I love the arc. We got a 6-month check-in and we got an annual check-in. And I will say this, if you're doing the estate planning, if you're doing annuities and you're selling life insurance, you need to check in with your clients once a year. One, they might have moved. Their beneficiary might need to be updated, right? Or have you ever went into a house and you check in and they haven't even opened up their packet? What that means is they trust you, that you did a good job, right? But you need to check in and be consistent when you check in, because checking in shows that you care, right? One of the things I try to do with the clients is, hey, Jim, how's everything? And here, let me say this. When you check in, don't go right into business. Like when you check in and you're doing your review, how is everything? How's the family? Did you move? Do we need to update anything on the policy? Like, don't go into business, because then it's just about the sale, but that's not how you would treat your family, right? Like if you're checking in on your dad, you're not like, let's say, for example, you need to borrow money. You're not just going to go in and be like, hey, Dad, I need some money. You might, but it probably would go a lot better if you talk to your dad and say, hey, Dad, how's it going? How you been? How's Mom? What's new in your world? Oh, okay. And by the way, Dad, right? It's the same thing with the clients. So when you're talking to your clients, you want to make sure when you check in with your clients that you are checking in and caring about them, asking those questions. So when you get done, they're not like, oh, he just wants something from me. So slow down and ask questions, okay? When you're checking in with them. And then talk about the life insurance. Remember this. Most people, when it comes to relationships, are they live it like, so you got different types of people. You have business people that are like A-type personalities, just get to the point. What's this about the business part, right? You have some people that are business relationship, like they want to do business and then develop the relationship, okay? And then most people are relationship and then the business, right? And then some people are just relationship, where those are our older folks that'll let you talk to them for 3 hours and won't buy nothing. So you got to watch that too, okay? But knowing that the vast majority, like when Jeff Bright does his things, his little tests, the vast majority of people are golden retrievers. The golden retrievers are relationship-oriented people. They want to know that you see them and that they matter to you. And if you can show that and you can project that when you're on the phone, or you can project that in the house, guess what? That's what takes them from a client to a family member to referrals to a lasting relationship, because you're consistent and you show that you care. And it's not just about business. It's about relationships and business, or, that whole process. And this is something that I've had to work on. And Carla, bless her heart, she's been working with me for a while. It's not just about making money, Marcus, or when you call your agents, what they're doing, their activity. And I've been guilty of this, but getting involved in the weeds of their life, like what does that look like? Getting involved with the weeds of a client's life. What does that look like? Because if they think it's just about the money, that's when they don't call you. That's when they go get a new life insurance agent. That's when they go find a new agency to work with. They don't want to work with us because it's just about, oh, me making Marcus money, right? Or, oh, me making this sale so Marcus can get paid, or they smell the commission breath. So those are the things we want to stay away from, because that's not how you treat your family. So that's not how we're going to treat our clients. We're going to treat our clients like they matter, because they do. They're a human being, they're a soul, and they're made in God's image. And so everybody matters, right? And you have the opportunity to be in their life, to be a blessing to them, and to be an impact in their life. And God has given us the vehicle of life insurance to be able to do that. So the life insurance gets us in the door. But when I get in the door, I'm able to share with them so much more. I'll tell you one other quick story. I remember Jose and Loretta in Pueblo. It was a 2.5 hour drive going out there. And I get there. And of course, I'm there to talk about mortgage protection and life insurance. And this is making them family, right? They're still in the books. They've been with me again for about 12 years. But when I got there, her foot was laid up. And I'm like, of course I want to talk about sales, but you got to kind of like read the room, right? So I'm in the room, I'm in the house, and I'm like, what's going on, Miss Loretta? And she's like, I got bit by a spider. And it was like I don't think it was a brown recluse, but it was one of those like bad kind of ones where it starts like eating away at your skin, like bad, right? And so for those who know me, I'm a man of faith. And I'm like, Miss Loretta, that's not good. Before we get into the whole life insurance piece and talking about why I'm here, do you mind if I just pray with you? They looked, they said, no, we don't mind. And so I laid hands on Miss Loretta and prayed for her. Now, am I telling everybody go in people's houses or pray for them? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is care. How can you show that you care for people? I prayed for Miss Loretta. Actually, God worked a miracle. The spider bite went down, and they've been my clients. Anytime they need something, they call me. They refer their family to me. And I'm not saying it to toot my own horn, but what I'm telling you is this is how you can show that you care. Go the extra mile. If a person asks with you to walk with them a mile, walk with them 2. Right? If a person asks for the coat off your back, give them the coat and your other coat, right? Go the extra mile. When a person is near you and they need help, if you have it and it's in your power to help them, don't tell them to go away and come back tomorrow. This is what makes a client a family member, because they know that Marcus is going to go the extra mile for me. Will you go the extra mile for your clients? Will you go above and beyond? Will you send out the birthday text messages? Will you send out the cards? Like this is things that help people know that they matter to you. Consistency and follow-up, which takes me to my next point. On touching bases regularly, another good one, especially if you're dealing with chargebacks and your persistency and your placement is not good. I remember when I first got started, I got this letter from Transamerica, and the letter said this, y'all. Hopefully, I'll never get this letter, but it said, Marcus, if you don't get your placement up, we are going to terminate your contract with us. And I'm talking about I was brand new, y'all. It was like 50%. It was terrible. And so I called Andy, and I'm like, Andy, I got this letter from Transamerica, and they said that if I don't get this up, they're going to fire me. And he just starts laughing. For those who talk to Andy, y'all know how his laugh is, right? He's like, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, this is not funny. Like, this is how I take care of my wife and kids. Like, why are you laughing? And he was like, Bo, that's the letter to say your placement is not good. But and then he coached me. He said, what are you doing? And I said, well, here's what I'm doing. And he said, well, you got to bring the sale down. The cost of what you're selling them needs to come down. And then he said, here's what a lot of people are doing who are having issues with their placement. Write this down. So this is point number 2 on this category, okay? Or point number B is when you do your check-ins, yes, call them, check in on their birthday. But after you make the sale, nowadays we got text messages, right? But back in the day, we didn't have all that. So a handwritten note goes wonders with people. So when we say a handwritten note, that is you writing it and having it and you signing it and sending it. Yep. So if you're writing 10 applications a week, you go out and buy some note cards. If you get and you send them to all 10 of the people, you can have your staff do it, sign it, but it shows that you care. And what happens is it separates you from other life insurance people. And oh, by the way, when you separate yourself from other life insurance people, now you're a person of value. People come to you because you are a person of value. They want what you have because you add value to them. So make yourself a person of value by doing the extra thing. And then the last point on this one, okay, is surprise them. Do something unexpected. So on Miss Betty's birthday, I get her a card, right? Do something that they don't expect. Introduce them to your contacts. If they got issues with their Medicare and they need help with that, or they need help with like mortgage because I got a network, right? So if they need help with loans and mortgages, my mom is a realtor, right? My aunt is a realtor, and I put them in contact with it. I don't have to do that because I don't monetarily benefit from it, but it's something that they need. And Zig Ziglar says, if you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. So if I'm a person of value, they can call me and get help with anything. Now, when they need something, they call me and say, hey, Marcus, do you do this? And if I do, I help them and we make money. But if I don't mind helping them and referring to someone else. Because it's not just about Marcus. It's about what they need and making sure I can help them. All right. So we're getting to the end of this, okay? And just some final thoughts. So those are the 5 points. Let's kind of wrap up and just make sure we're on the same page. I gave you a lot of information, okay? So point number 1 is relationship formula principles, right? Authenticity, empathy, and value first. Point number 2, trust as a foundation, okay? And you build trust by doing stuff consistently, and it doesn't happen overnight. Point number 3 is going beyond business and making them and treating everybody like their family, okay? And then point number 4 is active listening. And I gave you examples for active listening and making sure, am I hearing you right? Is that what I hear you say? Does that sound right? That's active listening. And then point number 5 is consistency and follow-up, being consistent and following up. And then let me say this, be consistent with yourself. Be a person of discipline, right? And discipline, I've heard it said like this, and it's probably one of my favorite definitions for discipline. But discipline is self-imposed limitations. Mm-hmm. There are things that I can do that I don't do because I'm disciplined, right? And so if you lack discipline, ask yourself, what are some things that I want to accomplish? And I would venture to say that you don't accomplish them because you lack discipline, right? Let's get disciplined in 2025. Let's go out and kill it. And then lastly, business isn't about transactions. It's about transformation. Let me just say that one more time. Business is not about transactions. It's about transformation. The relationship we build in sales doesn't just impact revenue, right? It impacts lives. When you prioritize people over profit, profit will follow. I'm going to give you that statement again. This is my closing remarks, and I'm going to tie it in with the story. Business isn't about transactions. It's about transformation. The relationships we build in sales doesn't impact revenue. It impacts lives. When you prioritize people over profits, the profits will follow. What does that mean? When I met Andy 13 years ago, we entered into a business relationship. It wasn't about transacting me. It was about transforming me. Walking with Andy and Jane for the last 13 years has transformed my life. It's transformed my marriage. It's transformed my leadership. It's transformed my communication, my ability to communicate. And it's about relationships. The relationship that I have with Andy and with the Alliance and the leaders in the Alliance has literally made me a better version of Marcus. When you go into the house and you're helping clients, you're creating a relationship, you're building value, and you want to build impact. You're impacting lives. And here's what happens. When you begin to impact lives, money follows. Don't chase money because it makes itself like wings and it will fly away. Chase being a person of value. Chase being a person of purpose. When you know why you're here and why God sent you here, you chase that. You go after the vision that God put in your heart. The reason that you're on this call is because of the vision that Andy had in his heart many years ago. The reason that we're all impacted is because of that vision, and it's transformed. Look at all the lives that have been transformed through the Alliance. My life, your life, watching what God is doing. Like, I'm honored and privileged to be on this journey with Andy and Jane because it has transformed my life. He didn't treat me like just a business person. He treated me like a human being, like I mattered, like he cared. And that was one of the things I told Carlos, like, I don't think he has to do this. I honestly think Andy cares. Like, I think he genuinely cares about me and about us and wants to see us do the best. And because he cared, guess what? I go all in and give it 100%. Not perfect, not all the time, but I do my best because I want to pay back what has been paid into me. When you do that for your clients and you prioritize people over profits, the profits will follow. So my question for you is, do you care? My question for you is, are you willing to go the extra mile by asking questions, digging in deep, and making sure you put the relationship over money? You put your values, you become a person of value, because that's why I still show up. That's why I come to the events. And let me say this, get your ticket to April 4th through the 6th. stage to success. When you show up there, we're going to add value to your life. It's because I go to these events every 3 months that we are able to continue to grow. I want to see you in Burlington, North Carolina in April, and then come to me and say, hey, Marcus, I applied what you taught us. I've applied what Andy's teaching in the 8 steps, and now my life is changed and transformed. I love you guys. My name is Marcus Richardson. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Andy and Jane, again, for giving me a chance to be able to share my heart with the people. But I tried not to get too excited today. I know sometimes I get really excited and try to inspire, but I wanted you to take this information very practically and apply it to your life, because if you take these 5 points, you will transform your business in 2025. You'll have repeat customers, and you'll thank yourself that you actually applied the information that you got. Again, it's Marcus Richardson. I love you. Have a blessed week. Thank you again for the Opportunity Alliance.